Hello, and welcome to Crew Call, the Below the Line podcast by, for, and about the crew. Today's guest is the assistant to famed screenwriter John August and the producer of a little podcast you may have heard of, Scriptnotes. Welcome, Stuart Friedel. Hi, Stuart. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I am good. So thank you so much for doing this interview with me. This is awesome.
Oh, glad to be here.
And we could talk about a couple of things, too, because you are a personal assistant, correct?
Yeah. I don't know what, I just say assistant. I don't know what word I'd put in front of it. I would say personal assistant. Sometimes I tell people I'm a writer's assistant.
Okay.
But yeah, John August's assistant is probably the easiest thing to say.
And so I assume you're also a writer yourself?
Trying to be, yeah.
Okay. And then also you are a producer of the podcast Scriptnotes as well.
That is true.
So for that, are you producing it? What are you doing for that podcast?
With Scriptnotes, I really just do whatever's needed. So kind of like a traditional producer on like an independent film. I mean, John usually comes up with the topics himself, John and Craig together sometimes, but I do all the 3-page challenge readings. I help organize all the live events. I make sure that the podcast actually gets put on the air or on iTunes when it needs to be. I maintain all the links, just really whatever odd jobs need to get done, I do them.
Okay, great. So when did you start working with John?
3 years ago, almost to the day, actually, June 21st, 2011.
Okay. How did you get that position?
I applied. The email came through to the listserv that my graduate school class maintains. Oh, okay. And I had kind of known for a long time that specifically being John's assistant was something I was interested in doing. And so when I saw that come through, I jumped on it and I applied, and it was a process. There was like a typical cover letter that was requested, and then from there were a few interviews and asked for proofreading and notes and cast ideas and all that stuff on that. And then I think it got down to the final 3 after that. And for those 3, he gave us an assignment to write a table of contents for what would be, in theory, a book that he would write that would be both. The comparison he used was Tina Fey's book. So like sort of war stories, but also sort of screenwriting how to write the table of contents and defend the table of contents and explain what each section would be.
Oh, wow.
And then from there I got the job. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, though. He put you guys through the test. I like that.
He certainly did.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So now, was this the first job that you had right out of school, or did you assist another writer before?
Well, I've kind of been around the block. I got out here when I was young. So I went to undergrad and then graduate school out in Los Angeles County, okay. Various places. So I had a lot of internships. I had a few internships that were kind of hybrid assistantships. And then when I left grad school, I went and worked at Disney Channel for a year to the day, actually, from June 21st, 2010 to June 20th, 2011. Development there. Okay,
that's cool. What is your job specifically? Walk us through a day from morning till when you end. What would you do for him?
Oh, God. There's really kind of no such thing as a typical day. I would say, it depends. Well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Ryan and Nima are in the office, who are tech guys. So those days, it's a lot of meeting and talking about apps and talking about what we want to do next and how to answer tech support emails and troubleshooting and just all sorts of stuff like that. When they're not in the office, it's pretty quiet. I get in at 9. The only 2 constants is I usually get lunch for everyone and I usually get coffee. Aside from that, if John is writing something, then I try to be quiet, and I proofread whatever comes out of the printer. If it's a heavy app day, sometimes John and I will continue to go over app stuff. We have all sorts of people that come through, right now John's working on something that requires a storyboard artist, so he's in the office sometimes, and when he's there, talking to him. But in general, really just whatever the current work dictates, I try to assist with and help with wherever possible. And then of course on Tuesdays, Mondays is the big Scriptnotes day because it comes out on Tuesdays. So on Mondays, I'm doing a lot of making chapter markers, listening to the episode, be sure there aren't any glaring problems with it. Just really whatever. That's sort of, there's a lot of that in Hollywood. There's a lot of jobs that are whatever needs to be done, you do it.
Right. Now, do you have any input on stuff? Do you get to like discuss certain ideas with him? Any kind of input on his work?
John is extremely good at what he does. He will sometimes talk things out at lunch, or, if he is working something through, he sometimes will do that out loud. When I'm proofreading, if there's a logic flaw, if there is some glaring error, a character's name changes, I give him those notes. But I try not to stick too much into it. Definitely, he's him for a reason. So, I let him do his thing.
Does he ever discuss anything with you? Does he voluntarily?
We definitely talk things through a lot. I always try to offer this sort of feedback that's constructive. I'm trying to think of a way to put this that makes sense. And the only thing I can think of is comparing to the way that I deal with my nephew, who's 2. But that sounds like I'm saying, but when my nephew's discovering something, I don't ever force a thought down his throat. I try to ask questions or point to blocks in a way that he gets to the answer that he wants to get to. So when John's coming up with ideas, if he asks for my feedback, I will definitely give it. But if we're just bouncing ideas back and forth, I try to ask questions that I see that will help him get where his mind is already going.
Now, does he travel a lot?
He travels a decent amount. I would say he travels for Austin most years. He travels for Sundance most years. So, he does that. During Big Fish, he was in New York and Chicago constantly back and forth. But I never go with him on any of those trips. I went to see Big Fish in Chicago, and I went to see it in New York. But I wasn't going back and forth with him for the months that he was there in production and pre-production and all that.
So now what do you do when you're at home and he's gone? Are you just holding down the fort, or is there specific things that you do while he's away?
I write my own stuff a lot. But yeah, no, it's pretty similar. I don't go out to get lunch anymore. I usually just make a sandwich for myself. But besides that, it's not much different. If the phone rings, I still answer it. If the phone doesn't ring, I'm used to coming from where I came from at Disney. I was assisting 3 people. The phone never stopped ringing, multiple lines. Yeah. It's not like that at a writer's place.
Now, let's talk about your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are your goals as far as with your writing and everything? Are you strictly want to do a screenwriting, or is there other kind of writing a book?
I'm definitely interested in film and television. I think television a little bit more right now. I like the way that stories develop and characters develop on TV, but I would say screenwriting primarily. No real book writing interests or anything like that.
Now, how do you feel this job is going to help you with your goals?
I think immensely. It's amazing watching John work. It teaches you a lot about what needs to be done to actually be a working professional screenwriter. It's also because of John's uniqueness in all these other things that he does, like the website and Scriptnotes. I liken it to being a TA at a global screenwriting class. So through screenwriting.io, which is a website that John had the idea for that I maintain mostly, I am forced to constantly re-examine basic questions about screenwriting that a lot of people probably take for granted. So there's that continued education and that specific life of a screenwriter education. And then it's also just that I'm plugged in all the time. I can get, my phone calls answered by people at places if it comes to that. And John's very good with feedback. If I ever have anything he wants to read, or if I want him to read, he'll read it, and always gives extremely smart and extremely poignant notes. I think that if you want to be a writer, this is a fantastic job to get. Any sort of writer's assistant job is a fantastic job to get.
With your duties, most of the stuff is, of course, pertaining to work and whatnot. Does he also make you do any kind of personal duties? Is that part of the hours that you put in where it goes off of what you're doing and more into just regular errands and stuff like that?
Not really. I mean, lunch and coffee are, definitely things that I do. If he is out of allergy medicine and I'm on my way in, maybe he'll ask me to stop by Walgreens and pick that up. But he's pretty self-sufficient personally. I don't really have to do anything that isn't directly related to work.
Oh, that's
and I'm happy to if he ever asks. Sometimes, if something, an odd thing comes up. But I know a lot of people who have similar jobs who definitely have a personal work hybrid job, and I would not put myself in that category necessarily.
Right. So now like you said, you've been around for a while, and you've assisted other people, and you've had other jobs and stuff. Have you seen the industry change much over the years that you've been doing it?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I moved out to LA for undergrad when I was 19, so that was about 9 years ago. There was no iPhone when I moved out here. There was, a significantly smaller internet video presence. There wasn't Crackle. There wasn't Yahoo Video. There definitely weren't original Netflix series. There were, HBO was doing original stuff, but they hadn't quite, like Sopranos was nearing its end, and they hadn't quite become the force that they are now. There certainly wasn't original programming on some of these networks that now do all sorts of original programming. I don't remember if there was anything of note on like AMC. So there's a lot more outlets now, definitely, than when I was here, or when I first got out here, both on television and the internet. It just seems like there's a lot more places to show good work, quality work, or work of any kind, really.
Have you been able to find any like little outlets for you to like do some of your work?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that anything that I wouldn't say I've taken advantage of that in any noteworthy sense. I definitely, back in college and grad school, put stuff on YouTube and had like a blog landing page where my shorts were located. But I would say that I am hopeful that as my career progresses, I will play in a lot of those sandboxes that didn't exist a decade ago. But I wouldn't say that the shifting nature of the industry over that time has in any way directly affected me up to this point.
Okay. Now, do you interact with any other assistants that maybe are people that work with him, like their assistants? Do you guys ever interact and work together?
Yeah. I know all of like John's agents, assistants that have come and gone. I know all them. But I've like I said, I've been out here for a while. A lot of my the people I interned with, however many years ago, are now working at whatever company. Or I went to graduate school for this, so all of my graduate school class, for the most part, is involved in some way. So it's definitely like a large portion of my friend group are various either assistants or executives or writers or directors, etc. out here.
Now, we were talking about technology with different things now. Is there any other kind of like software and stuff like that makes your job easier, makes his job easier?
We make software that I think is great. There were definitely times at the beginning of this job where John, needed to watermark a bunch of big fish scripts at once and didn't have a way to do that. And so Nima and Ryan came up with the Bronson watermarker and made that for us. And nice. John uses that all the time. Yeah, so I love that. We can read, when we came out with that, I was, from the day that we started beta testing it till now, I use it every day just because I'm always finding myself with 5 minutes to kill in line for, the post office or something. So I'll pull up my iPhone and use that. But in terms of us, my first week with John was when the new Final Cut came out, and I stopped cutting things because I don't really like that very much. Although, to be fair, I haven't played with it since apparently they've done some updates. But when I first started playing around with stuff, Macs weren't ubiquitous yet, and I had like an app called like Studio 8 for a PC, which I can't believe I ever used to even pretend to cut anything. And then when I was 18, I went to North Carolina School of the Arts for the summer, and they had Macs there and they had Final Cut, and that sort of changed the trajectory of my life in a pretty big way, I'd say.
Earlier, when we first started talking, you said you talked about apps. So what did he create different apps? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have an arm called quote unquote apps, which quote unquote apps.com.
Okay.
And we have Highland, which is a screenwriting app that runs on Fountain. We have Bronson Watermarker PDF that watermarks and secures PDFs. Weekend Read, FDX Reader, which is sort of the precursor to Weekend Read, on all sorts of fun stuff. Courier Prime, which isn't an app, that's just a font, but John definitely has an interest in screenwriter apps and general tech stuff.
And how do you contribute in those things? Are you helping with like the ideas of the apps, or help with the creation of the apps? How do you work with that?
I would say that it's a 3-person team, and I'm the 4th person.
Okay.
Ryan does all the UI and all the graphics. Nima does all the coding. John is the overall brain of the whole thing, and I'm just sort of the guy that I help with customer support. I help answer emails in general. I beta test a lot. I look over people's shoulders and say, that looks good, that looks bad. But really, I'm by no means part of the 3 of them are a team that really makes everything and are the muscle behind those. And I just sort of am the 4th guy that's there and can help where necessary.
So now let's go over all of your duties. You help with, like what you just said, with the apps. Then you help with the proofreading, his writing. What other things do you do?
Scriptnotes is a large part of my job. I look over the Ask email account, which is the contact account for John's website.
Okay.
So whenever we get emails for that, I usually am the first person to read them. I read the 3-page challenges for Scriptnotes. But really it's, like I said, it's a job that's very much in flux from day to day. And
right.
My typical list of duties, so to speak, isn't all that typical.
No, but you are handling different things that he does. The writing, the apps, the podcast. Right.
Right. If you call the office line, I answer the phone. And forward that up to him. I handle his schedule if there's ever major things to schedule. But in general, yeah, it's very hard to peg down a day to day.
How about if he's writing on a movie that's in production? What's your interaction like with the cast and crew? Do you go along with him? Are you there with him when he's there, or are you completely out of that and just back at the office?
He hasn't. In the 3 years I've been here, there haven't been any movies in production.
Okay.
Frankenweenie ended right before I got here. So that came out while I was with him. But then Big Fish was a large portion of the first year or 2 that I was here. So with that, that was in production, obviously. And so he was in Chicago for a while during out of towns for that. And Ryan and I went out there, but really just as observers, as fans. We saw the show. We stayed there for a weekend. We went out with the cast one night, and then I went out to New York when it was in New York. But never any like on set for weeks at a time duties or anything like that.
Now, what would you suggest to someone who's just starting out in the business who wants to be an assistant? What do they need to know? Who do they need to know? You got in basically from like school, and you applied, and you did it the good old fashioned way. But
yeah, well, I applied, but I had a resume when I applied. It's not like right. I just came in off the street. And I think it depends on A, how much time you have, B, how old you are, C, how much time you're willing to work for free. Interning is really the number one bit of advice that I can give anybody. If you can intern, right. If you can afford to intern, you should intern. That is important. That is the easiest way in. If you're good, if you intern and you're lazy and you're in trouble, yeah. But interning's great. You shouldn't make the joke that you get a good cup of coffee. That like I fetch a mean cup of coffee. Everybody makes that joke, and it's not. It's belittling to what it is. Because yes, you may get coffee, but that's not what you're applying for.
Right.
If you should go to school out here if you can. I know that's a big ask, but like if you're in high school and you want to be an assistant, if you want to work in Hollywood, you should try to get out to Hollywood as soon as you can. I went to school in Claremont, which is on the edge of LA County. I commuted 2+ hours, 3 days a week to internships. And that's each direction. So 5 hours, listen to a lot of wait, don't tell me and that stuff in that time. But that's from day one.
It's an investment.
And where I went to school, I got credit, and then eventually I got paid through the school to do it, which, if you can work that is great. And not to plug my own school too much, but I loved the experience in Claremont. Any of the 5 Claremont colleges, I would highly recommend anybody going to if they can. It was the greatest 4 years of my life. And while you're at UCLA or Chapman or USC, there's a lot of kids applying for the same internships. And if you're the kid that goes to, the other good schools in LA County, then you're not, you're different, which is, I think, a really good thing. So if you can intern, that's fantastic. Then I went to graduate school at USC. That was a great experience. That introduced me to a lot of people. But really, don't have a negative attitude. Don't ever look bored. Always accept everything with a smile, no matter how much you don't want to do something. Be excited about it. Don't make your boss feel bad that they gave you this task. Always, be proactive, positive. Always try to give good thoughts and input when it's appropriate. If you do all those things, then naturally you will be put in the right places.
Now, you said age was a factor. So how age being like younger or older as far as getting a job as a personal assistant?
Probably. I just say age. Like if you're 16 and you ask me how do I become a writer's assistant, I can give you a pretty good path. If you're 25 and you can't afford to intern, then it's a little bit harder for me to tell you what to do.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But yeah, I have a lot of friends who are in similar positions to me that got them through. Like I interned for a company called Absolutely for a while, which is Tim and Eric's company. And there, it seems like everybody I interned with went on to do something cool with somebody who is in some way indirectly or tangentially related. Like comedian X was looking for a personal assistant, so they asked somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody from Tim and Eric, and then they got some cool job that way. Or it all comes back to interning in my experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only avenue.
What would you say is the best part of your job?
Oh God. I have a great job. I interact with people every day that I grew up admiring and idolizing. And, when I was a little kid, I used to watch TV instead of do homework a lot. And my parents used to say to me, like, this is bad. This is not for your future. And now, like, looking back, that was the stuff that was for my future. And that's awesome. Like, if I were 12 and I knew what I am doing now, I'd be really, really, really happy.
Well, that is great. How about the worst thing? Is there anything that you don't like about your job?
That's a good question. Not really. Like I wake up with an alarm clock every day, which ideally I will not be doing the rest of my life. I really like wearing basketball shorts, and I don't wear those to work. I don't know if John would have a problem if I did, but I don't. But yeah, that's kind of why writing is an attractive career for me, because you get to make your own hours and not go into an office every day. And right now I don't really go into an office every day. I go into John's house, and it's the closest thing that I can have without working for myself.
I know. Isn't that the best when you don't have to go into work?
Oh God.
Work. You know what I mean?
And it's, besides the fact that I have regular hours, it doesn't usually feel like work here. John's extremely nice and a great boss. And it just never, I never am stressed knowing that Monday is coming.
That's awesome. And also it gives you, it also, I would think, helps with your creativity for your own stuff as well, working around that. Yeah,
it's very nice. Like I said, just watching the way that John conducts business and watching the way that he finds enough hours in the day to do all the things that he does is an extremely enlightening experience.
That is great. If you could, in the field of writing, let's say in the field of writing and what he does, if you could change anything, if you had a magic wand and you could do anything differently, would there be anything differently or anything that you would like to see happen or change or, just anything that you would like to see different? Like writing in Hollywood, working in this industry.
Yeah, that's a good question. About working in this industry, I mean, not on a general, not in any general sense. On case by case basis, there's always project to project things in various whoever's giving notes at what time. Sometimes you want things to be done differently, but I mean, besides like wishing on a star that Nathan For You goes for another 25 seasons, there's not really anything I can think of that needs to happen in Hollywood. I mean, I shouldn't say there's a ton of things that should or shouldn't happen, but there's no like general overarching statement I can make.
Okay. Now, is there anything for our viewers or our listeners that you would like to add that we haven't talked about, that might be a good piece of information that might be useful for them or just interesting? Yeah,
I mean, I think it really depends on what people want to do. On Scriptnotes this past week, which was episode 152, there was a really good discussion on mentors that Aline Brosh McKenna was the guest with John and Craig. And they were talking about various ways to approach people and to conduct yourself that I thought was really enlightening. And I just talked to my dad about it last night for a while, so it's on the top of my head. But listen to that. If you have 23 minutes, I think it's worth your time. And nothing else really too grand. Read John's website. I say that as somebody who read it for a long time and loved it, and that's why I work for John, not somebody that works for John and is plugging his website. But it is a very valuable tool. Scriptnotes, I can't say the same thing about objectively because I've been here since day one, but I think Scriptnotes is wonderful.
Okay.
But yeah, those are all great resources.
Great. And do you have any advice for us podcasters?
For podcasters?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what you're podcasting about. Keep doing interesting things. Try to speak in a way that I can listen to you at double speed and still understand what you're saying, because that's how I listen to podcasts.
Okay.
But no, I think podcasting is absolutely wonderful. I wanted to be in radio journalism for a lot of my life before various things convinced me that was not what I should do with my life. And I love that we have this, this open platform, this democratic media platform where people can just get on the mic and say what they want. And if people want to listen, they can. Keep doing what you're doing. It's wonderful.
Well, Stuart, it was great speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time out. We really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me.
These interviews are really great for our listeners just to get an idea of what maybe they want to get into. If they thought, hey, I want to do that, or they are young writers and they don't know, they're kind of stuck. Well, what do I do? How do I even, what could I even do as a writer for a job? And that's why we like doing these interviews, so that everybody can get an idea of how to start their career.
For sure.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
A pleasure. Pleasure's mine.
And that's it for Crew Call. If you'd like to support the podcast, remember to click the Amazon link on the Tappa website before you go shopping. It doesn't cost you anything, and Amazon gives us a little kickback. Everyone wins. And if you like what you've heard, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. Good or bad, we really appreciate the feedback. Tune in next time for current entrepreneur and former grip Steve Cardellini.